Andrew grew up in glory, spoiled to the point of forgetting boundaries. To him, scandals were mere games, reputations could be lost, but status was untouchable. Camilla, on the other hand, was the opposite. Once an outsider, a woman vilified by the entire kingdom, she endured quietly, taking each step, bearing every scorn to earn her place today. And now, watching Andrew arrogantly tarnish the royal family's image with his scandals, Camilla knows she cannot let his hubris drag her back to the abyss. One builds with effort, the other destroys with delusions. The confrontation, of course, has begun. The day Camilla donned the Queen Consort's crown, the light from the glistening pearls atop her head seemed to illuminate the grand hall of Buckingham Palace. The crowd of nobles clad in expensive ceremonial attire and forced smiles stood in rows to offer their congratulations. Applause echoed polite but frigid, as if merely fulfilling a ritual. Camilla stood tall, her sharp eyes scanning each face. She knew that behind the words of praise lurked scrutinizing glances and whispers that would never reach her ears. But among them all, it was Andrew's gaze that sent a chill down her spine. Prince Andrew, the youngest brother of King Charles III, stood at the far corner of the hall, a champagne flute in hand, his lips curled into a half-smile. His eyes never left Camilla, but they held no trace of celebration. It was unmasked disdain, sharp as a blade. Camilla felt it, as she had always felt similar looks decades ago, when she was merely that woman. The name the press and public once used to vilify her. She turned away, trying to focus on the soothing music from the orchestra, but memories flooded back like a tidal wave. Camilla had never forgotten the days when she was branded the other woman. Back then, she was simply a woman in love with Charles, a man trapped in an unhappy marriage with Princess Diana. But the world didn't see that love. They saw only a woman who shattered the happiness of Britain's most beloved icon. The press painted her as cunning a witch, unworthy of stepping foot in the palace. The public sent hate mail calling her names that even now forced her to take a deep breath to stay composed. Yet Camilla didn't crumble. She learned to live with the contempt, to walk with her head held high, even when her heart bled. Step by step, year by year, she built her place. She was patient not out of ambition, but because she knew Charles needed her. And when Queen Elizabeth II passed, when Charles ascended the throne, Camilla knew her moment had come. She was no longer the shunned woman, she was Queen Consort. But Andrew, who always saw himself as the heart of the royal family, had never accepted her. To him, Camilla was not just an outsider, but a threat to the old order. The order from which he had reaped unearned privileges for years. He looked at her as one might a usurper, a woman unworthy of standing beside his brother, let alone wearing a crown. Camilla descended from the ceremonial dais, her pearl-colored silk gown rustling softly. She moved toward Charles, who was smiling warmly at the guests. But in a fleeting moment, her eyes met Andrew's once more. His smile had vanished, replaced by a cold stare that seemed to say, "You may wear the crown, but you'll never truly belong here." Camilla gave a faint smile, not out of joy, but because she had learned that in the royal family, a smile was the most powerful weapon. Yet deep within, she knew Andrew's hostility had never slept. And today, as she officially became Queen Consort, that fire only burned brighter. In the memory of the British public, Prince Andrew, Duke of York, was once a symbol of charm and allure. As the youngest son of Queen Elizabeth II, and Andrew grew up in the kind of indulgence only a prince could know. Articles from the 1980s described him as Randy Andy, the golden boy of the royal family with a radiant smile, golden hair, and the confident demeanor of a naval pilot who fought in the Falklands War. Tabloids couldn't stop singing his praises, Britain's most charming prince, the man who drives women wild. Photos of Andrew at lavish parties surrounded by beauties in glittering gowns became familiar front-page staples. The public adored him not just because he was the Queen's son, but because he seemed to live the life they could only dream of: free, luxurious, limitless. But that golden aura, through the lens of the media, gradually became tainted by stains that could not be erased. By the 1990s and early 2000s, the tone of the press shifted. Randy Andy was no longer the charming boy, but a man drowning in romantic scandals and a reckless lifestyle. Asterisk. The Daily Mail asterisk and asterisk, The Guardian asterisk published stories of all-night parties at elite clubs, yacht trips with billionaires, and murky connections with powerful figures. The public began to question what was Prince Andrew, under the guise of Britain's trade ambassador, really doing on those costly diplomatic trips. Photos of him grinning alongside wealthy businessmen later investigated for shady dealings stirred public unease. Then came the name Jeffrey Epstein, like a slow-burning bomb. It first appeared in a small article in The Times in 2001 noting Andrew's presence at an Epstein party in New York. At the time, the public paid little attention. Epstein was just a wealthy financier, a friend of the elite. But as allegations against Epstein surfaced about his sex trafficking network and illegal activities, Andrew's name was dragged into the storm. Articles in BBC and The Independent were merciless. Prince Andrew's dangerous ties to Jeffrey Epstein, Duke of York, spotted on the Lolita Express. Old photos once deemed harmless became damning evidence in the public's eyes. Images of Andrew stepping out of Epstein's mansion, smiling carelessly, were exploited relentlessly by the media. The public, from royal enthusiasts to those already skeptical of the aristocracy's opulence, grew outraged. On online forums and in pub conversations, Andrew became a symbol of decadence, a prince who had lost his honor. But in his own world, Andrew saw nothing wrong. As the Queen's youngest son, he was raised believing himself untouchable. The royal family was his shield, his title, his armor and privilege, his ultimate power. He didn't need to explain or justify. The parties, the trips, the connections, all were deserved rewards for someone of royal blood. When palace advisors urged him to distance himself from Epstein, Andrew merely smirked. They don't understand, he once told a close friend during an evening at Royal Lodge, his tone dripping with arrogance. I'm the Queen's son. No one can touch me, not even Charles's old wife. From her vantage point, Camilla watched it all with a piercing gaze. She didn't need newspapers to know who Andrew was. She had seen him for years, from the days when he was the royal family's golden boy, bragging about his romantic conquests and powerful connections. Camilla, seasoned by her own years of public hatred, understood better than anyone that the royal family's honor was fragile, as delicate as glass. Someone like Andrew, with his arrogance and recklessness, was a danger not just to himself, but to the legacy Queen Elizabeth II had spent her life protecting. She recalled an evening at Clarence's house years ago when Andrew, slightly drunk, had mocked her in front of guests. Camilla, you must be so proud, he said, his tone sweet but sharp as a knife. From being hated by the whole country to climbing your way here. Camilla didn't respond, offering only a faint smile, but in her heart his words were a reminder. Andrew didn't just despise her, he despised anyone who dared challenge his self-appointed authority. Now standing beside Charles as Queen Consort, Camilla observed Andrew from afar during the rare official events he was still permitted to attend. She saw a man trapped in delusions of power, blind to the fact that his aura had long since faded. To Camilla, Andrew wasn't just a failed prince, but proof of a harsh royal truth. Honor doesn't come from titles, but from how one upholds them. And Andrew, with his mounting scandals and unshakable arrogance, was unworthy of that responsibility. Winter at Sandringham was cloaked in thick fog, as if the very atmosphere sought to conceal the secrets being discussed in the palace's private chambers. Inside the ancient library, with its oak bookshelves and crackling fireplace, the air was heavier than the chill outside. King Charles III sat at the head of the table, hands clasped tightly, his stern face betraying tension. The royal family's senior advisors, dressed in impeccable suits, sat in silence, their eyes avoiding one another. Camilla, Queen Consort, sat to Charles's right, her demeanor calm but her gaze sharp, taking in every detail. Across from her, Prince Andrew lounged with an air of defiance, legs crossed, a faint smile hovering on his lips. The meeting had been called urgently after Jeffrey Epstein's name resurfaced in the press. This time with damning new details. Andrew had been spotted at Epstein's events multiple times, even after Epstein's conviction. Public outrage boiled, social media overflowed with criticism, and the royal family, as always, found itself at the center of a media storm. Charles, as king, could not let the situation escalate further. But in this room, it was not Charles but Camilla who broke the silence. Andrew is a danger to the royal family, she said, her voice low and clear, without a trace of hesitation. The room seemed to hold its breath. The advisors, accustomed to the palace's discretion and roundabout phrases, turned to her, startled by her bluntness. Charles frowned slightly but didn't interrupt. Andrew opposite her leaned back, his eyes narrowing, his faint smile morphing into a mocking smirk. "What was that, Camilla?" he asked, his tone light but icy. "A danger I'd say the royal family is quite used to dealing with. Stains, wouldn't you after all? Weren't you the one who made Diana cry?" Andrew's words struck like a dagger piercing Camilla's pass. The room fell silent, save for the crackling fire. The advisors lowered their gazes, none daring to speak. Charles stirred as if to say something, but Camilla raised a hand, subtly signaling him to stay quiet. She locked eyes with Andrew, unflinching. In that moment, she was not the Queen Consort, not the woman once despised by all of Britain. She was Camilla, who had endured years of humiliation and contempt and learned to turn pain into strength. "Andrew," she said, her voice steady but weighted with authority, "I don't deny my past, but I've spent decades rebuilding, proving I'm worthy. And you, what have you done besides let your scandals drag this family down?" Andrew let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Worthy," he repeated, his voice dripping with scorn. "You think wearing a crown is enough to make people forget what you did? You have no right to judge me, Camilla. Not you, not anyone in this room." The tension in the room was palpable, taut as a bowstring. One advisor, Mr. James, an older man with silver hair and a habitually cautious tone, tried to defuse the situation. "Prince Andrew, we're here to discuss the future, not the past. The Epstein articles. They're causing serious damage. We need a plan." But Andrew's eyes remained fixed on Camilla. "A plan," he said, his voice rising. "Your plan is to push me aside, isn't it? You think you can make me a scapegoat to save the royal family's image? I'm the Queen's son, don't forget that." Camilla didn't respond immediately. She sat upright, hands resting lightly on the table, but her gaze never wavered from Andrew. She understood him, a man trapped in delusions of his own power, who never imagined he could fail. But she also knew the royal family could not keep enduring the stains Andrew brought. "You may be the Queen's son," she finally said, her voice low, but cutting, "but that doesn't give you the right to destroy everything this family has built. You want to bring up my past, fine, but at least I've learned to face it. You, Andrew, are running from your own mistakes." Andrew opened his mouth to retort, but no words came. The room sank into a heavy, almost suffocating silence. Charles at last spoke, his voice hoarse but firm. "Enough. We'll discuss this further, but for now we're done." The group rose and left the room in silence. Andrew passed by Camilla without a word, but his glare seemed to burn. Camilla stood still, not looking back. In her heart, a cold certainty took root. This confrontation was no mere argument. It was the start of a war, one she knew would not end with words. In the dim light of a small room at Clarence's house, Camilla sat across from three of the royal family's top media advisors. The space was quiet, broken only by the rustle of papers and the soft tap of a pen on the wooden table. The men before her, Sir Edward Langley, head of the palace's media team, and his two assistants, were seasoned experts in shaping the royal family's public image. But today they weren't discussing charity events or King Charles's speeches. The topic was Prince Andrew, and Camilla, with her calm yet incisive demeanor, was steering the conversation. "We cannot allow Andrew to keep appearing in public," Camilla said, her voice even but resolute. "Every time he's in the papers, the royal family is pushed to the brink of collapse. You know this better than I do." Sir Edward, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and a cautious gaze, nodded slightly. "Ma'am, we understand. But completely removing Prince Andrew's public role is a delicate step. He's still the late Queen's son, and the public has lost faith in him," Camilla interrupted, her voice still calm but sharp as a blade. "They don't want to see someone tied to Epstein standing beside the king. If we don't act, the press will keep digging, and everything we've built will crumble." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. No one objected. They knew she was right. The articles about Andrew and Epstein had erupted like an unstoppable wildfire. Asterisk. The Daily Telegraph, asterisk, published old photos of Andrew at Epstein's mansion, while asterisk the Sun asterisk boldly labeled him the disgraced prince. On social media, the hashtag #AndrewOut spread, accompanied by calls to strip him of his titles. Camilla understood that to protect the royal family, she had to act swiftly and decisively. We need a strategy, she continued. Gradually reduce Andrew's presence at public events. Replace him with other family members, William, Kate, or even Sophie. The public needs to be reminded that the royal family remains strong despite one person's mistakes. Sir Edward jotted notes quickly, his eyes betraying admiration for Camilla's resolve. We'll start immediately, ma'am. A formal announcement that Prince Andrew is stepping back to focus on personal projects could be the first step. We'll control the narrative. Camilla nodded, but inwardly she knew this was more than a media issue. It was a move in a game of power, and she was playing to win. Not out of personal vendetta, but because she understood better than anyone, as long as Andrew appeared as a prince, the royal family would bear his stain. In the weeks that followed, Andrew began to notice the shift. Invitations to royal events once a given dwindled. A London charity gala he typically headlined was handed to the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. An official visit to a military organization, where he was once the center of attention, became a distant memory. Even at a Buckingham Palace reception, his name was absent from the guest list. Sitting in his study at Royal Lodge, flipping through his schedule, Andrew felt the glow that once defined him fading away. He began to investigate. A call to a longtime palace staffer, someone once loyal to him, brought an answer he dreaded. "Sir, this came from the top," the staffer said hesitantly. "I heard the Queen Consort met with the media team." Andrew gripped the phone, his knuckles whitening. "Camilla!" He growled, his voice trembling with rage. He didn't need more proof. The sidelining, the evasive glances from palace staff, the articles shifting praise to William and Kate, all bore her mark. Camilla, the woman he once scorned, was methodically pushing him into obscurity. Fury surged through him like a wildfire. He couldn't accept being overshadowed, erased from the family he believed he defined. He began to act, reaching out to old loyalists within the royal family palace staff, aristocrats who owed him favors. Friends of Queen Elizabeth II. In hushed conversations, he whispered about Camilla, dredging up her past, the love triangle with Charles and Diana, the years she was branded a homewrecker. "She's not fit to be Queen Consort," he said, his tone persuasive. "The royal family needs those of true royal blood, not someone who once hurt our family." His whispers like ripples began to spread. A small article in The Express revived the old story of Camilla and Diana. Its headline, "Sly Queen Consort, Has the Past Truly Been Forgotten?" On social media, anonymous accounts started circulating posts about the truth behind the crown. The public, ever eager for royal drama, was quickly swept up. Camilla, though accustomed to criticism, sensed the tension in the air. She knew Andrew was behind it, playing a dangerous game. That night at a private dinner in a suburban London mansion, the aristocracy gathered under warm golden lights and soft piano music. Camilla, in a deep green silk gown, stood beside Charles, smiling as she chatted with guests. But her eyes didn't miss Andrew, standing in a corner, surrounded by a small group of loyalists. He laughed loudly, his voice carrying, but his glances kept darting toward her. As the evening grew late, Andrew approached her, his wine glass swaying lightly. "Camilla," he said, his tone honeyed but laced with malice, "you look radiant with your new crown. But you know not everyone forgets what you've done." The room seemed to freeze. Nearby guests turned away, pretending not to hear, but the tension spread like a wave. Camilla stood still, her eyes locked on Andrew. She didn't blink, didn't waver. Then with a faint but icy smile, she replied, "I built this position with patience, Andrew. You built yours on scandals. Let's see who lasts longer." Andrew opened his mouth to respond, but her gaze stopped him cold. It wasn't the look of a frightened woman. It was the look of someone who knew they held power and was ready to wield it. He turned away, his smile fading, but inside his anger only burned hotter. As the pale sunset enveloped Royal Lodge, Prince Andrew sat alone in the vast drawing room, his vacant stare fixed on the long-extinguished fireplace. Family portraits on the walls, once a source of pride, now seemed to gaze down with silent judgment. The whiskey glass on the table was empty, but he didn't bother to refill it. The room's stillness only amplified the sense of powerlessness gnawing at him from within. The past months had been an undeniable string of defeats. Andrew had believed he could turn the tide. He had tried to fight back, calling writing meeting with those once loyal to him, but it was all in vain. Former allies now responded with vague promises, their eyes averted. Some were blunter, urging him to accept reality and stay quiet. Even palace staff who once bowed before him now kept their distance, as if his presence were a liability. With a bitter pang, Andrew realized Camilla didn't just control the media, but the very corridors of royal power. She didn't need to raise her voice or confront him openly. She operated in the shadows with the precision of someone who knew the palace's inner workings. His powerlessness became starkly clear at a ceremony in Buckingham Palace, where he was forced to attend as a mere family member, nothing more. He stood in the back, nearly invisible among the crowd of nobles and dignitaries. Camilla, in a pearl silk gown, stood beside Charles, her eyes sweeping the room with the confidence of someone wielding absolute authority. As she passed Andrew to greet a guest, their eyes met for a fleeting moment. Andrew's burned with anger and defiance, as if to challenge her. But Camilla merely looked at him, no smile, no flicker, her gaze cold as ice. It was the look of a victor, and Andrew knew it. He turned away, clenching his fist to hide their trembling. In that moment, he felt the harsh truth: he couldn't fight Camilla. She had built her position through decades of patience, enduring insults and scorn to become Queen Consort, and he had squandered his privilege on lavish parties, shady connections, and self-inflicted scandals. He might be a prince, but in this game, he was a pawn, discarded. That night back at Royal Lodge, Andrew sat at his desk leafing through old documents, letters from Queen Elizabeth II, commendations from organizations he once patronized. He searched for a spark of hope, a sign he could reclaim what was lost. But deep down, he knew the door had closed. Camilla, with her terrifying silence and precise moves, had ensured he would remain trapped in his own darkness. Meanwhile, at Clarence House, Camilla stood by a window, gazing into the dark garden. She knew her victory wasn't permanent. Andrew, though defeated, was still an indelible part of the royal family. He might be silent, but his hostility would never fade. She gave a faint smile, not of joy, but because she understood a truth Andrew never grasped in the royal family. The survivor isn't the strongest, but the one who knows when to wait and when to strike. Behind the palace lights, the silent war simmered on, but Camilla, crown on her head and resolve in her heart, was ready for whatever move came next. Hit like, share, and subscribe to stay tuned for more gripping stories.